Have you ever wondered what happens at the exact moment when someone who is too good, too compassionate, too willing to forgive, simply breaks?
I'm not talking about a passing fit of anger or a burst of pride. I mean the moment when the empath, the one who always carried others' guilt and silenced their own pain, decides not to forgive anymore. It's an instant that cuts through the air, that tears away the masks of everyone around them. And believe me, no one comes out unscathed. Because when the empath stops forgiving, the truth is stripped bare with a violence that terrifies. The false kindness of those around them is exposed, hollow promises evaporate, and the bonds that once seemed indestructible shatter like cheap glass. Suddenly, the one who seemed to be everyone's invisible support stops holding them up, and the ground disappears beneath the feet of those who once abused their silence. Do you feel it? That chill running through your body right now is the intuition that maybe, without realizing it, you have at some point played with the patience of someone like this. Or worse, that you are the one who keeps forgiving until you're bleeding inside. The entire world is held together by invisible balances, and one of the most dangerous is the one that rests on the patience of the sensitive. Because every forgiveness withheld, every apology rejected, is a mirror that reflects the true image of others, and that image is often monstrous. When the masks fall, there are no excuses to hide behind, no disguises left. Only the rawness of real intentions remains. This video is not a motivational talk nor a soft speech. Here you'll find something else. The brutal dissection of what happens psychologically when the empath says, "Enough." I'll show you how hidden dynamics fracture, how manipulators are revealed, how the theater that sustained coexistence collapses. And I'll do it without sugarcoating, with words that may unsettle you, but will open your eyes like never before. Stay until the end, because by the time it finishes, you won't just understand why the empath becomes the most feared threat when they stop forgiving. You'll also discover how to recognize those masks in your own life and learn to tear them down before they destroy you. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have the answers you've been searching for years, though facing them might not be pleasant. When the empath stops forgiving, a silent earthquake erupts that no one sees coming, and yet its shockwave wipes out everything. And here emerges a new nuance that few dare to confront: the addiction others have to the empath's forgiveness. Yes, you heard right. Addiction. There are people who need forgiveness the way others need a dose of drugs. They seek it, demand it, consume it, because they know that immediate absolution allows them to keep acting without consequences. The empath becomes their source of emotional oxygen, the perfect alibi that justifies every betrayal, every lie, every manipulation. Meanwhile, the empath wears down, fades away, becomes a shattered reflection of who they once were. But here lies the paradox. When the empath cuts off that endless source of forgiveness, what explodes is not only the other's rage, but also their deepest fear. Because the one who lives by asking for apologies without the intention to change, the one who manipulates with rehearsed tears or expired promises, is left without their supply, and the desperation they show at that moment is revealing. The naked manipulator is no longer strong, no longer powerful. They are a child trapped in their own lie, screaming because the drug of forgiveness has slipped through their fingers. And then comes the second, darker truth. The empath discovers that their capacity to forgive was the prison that kept them bound. That misunderstood compassion wasn't nobility, it was an invisible chain. Because behind every "I forgive you" was a sacrifice of self, a silent mutilation of dignity. When they wake from that hypnosis, they realize they've been feeding their own executioners. And in that awakening, there is as much pain as liberation, because looking back and seeing how much was given without receiving anything cuts like a knife. The fascinating part is how the psychological game flips. The one once seen as weak, soft, easy to manipulate, becomes the most feared figure in the room. Not because of what they do, but because of what they stop doing. They stop holding others up, stop justifying, stop softening the truth. And in that silence begins the true revelation. Masks don't fall with shouting, but with the absence of forgiveness. The cold light of the empath's indifference exposes every crack in the other, and suddenly all those familiar faces warp into their raw reality. Now think about this. What happens when an entire life has revolved around exploiting someone's goodness, and suddenly that someone shuts the door? What happens is collapse. Emotional, social, and in many cases, existential collapse. Because there are those who built their entire identity on the certainty that they would always be absolved, that there would always be a hand to wipe their guilt away. When that hand disappears, they are left suspended in the void, not knowing who they are, with nothing to hold on to. And that void, that sudden darkness, is what reveals the true monster that was hiding behind the mask. And here's something crucial for you to understand. The empath doesn't destroy anyone, they simply stop holding them up. It isn't vengeance, it isn't hatred, it isn't revenge. It's the simple withdrawal of a pillar that should never have borne so much weight. But for others, that withdrawal feels like an apocalypse, because their whole play depended on an audience that has now left the theater, and the actor without an audience is nothing. This is the moment when invisible hierarchies invert and roles change hands. The empath who was always seen as the savior becomes the judge, and their silence pronounces the sentence they would never dare to speak aloud. And the most disturbing part is that this sentence isn't written in words, it's written in renunciation. The real enough is not a shout. It is a silence that hurts more than any reproach. Psychology teaches us that relationships rest on implicit pacts, silent agreements that are rarely questioned. The pact between empath and manipulator was always unequal. One gave, the other took. One understood, the other demanded. One forgave, the other repeated. But when that pact breaks, the imbalance is exposed. And in that instant, the roles have nowhere left to hide. The victim ceases to be a victim, and the victimizer is trapped in their own web. What I want you to see is that this is not just a simple shift in dynamics. It is a brutal awakening. The empath discovers the power of not forgiving, and that power is unlike anything they've ever felt before. It is a force that needs no violence, no vengeance, because its mere existence raises the lies built up over years. The refusal to forgive is a mirror that forces the other to face themselves, and that's where the real screams begin. Now tell me, how many times have you given forgiveness that didn't deserve to be given? How many times have your pardons upheld the mask of someone who never intended to change? Because if you ever decide to stop, you must know that everything around you will transform. There will be no turning back, and what you discover may frighten you, but it can also set you free. And here lies the cruelest irony. The fall of masks doesn't depend on the empath becoming cruel. It depends on them, for the first time in their life, choosing to be fair to themselves. And here begins the most unsettling part. The moment when the empath, after ceasing to forgive, discovers that not only have the masks of others fallen, but so has their own. Because no one talks about this, but the empath also wears a mask. The mask of the Good Samaritan, of the one who always understands, of the one who endures even while broken inside. A mask built as both shield and excuse, because it was easier to care for others than to face their own emptiness. When that mask also falls, something new emerges. A being that no longer needs to justify themselves. A being who begins to walk with the rawness of someone stripped of all disguise. And in that instant, a fascinating phenomenon arises. The empath who once was predictable becomes an enigma. They no longer respond with the expected script, no longer grant the automatic forgiveness that calmed the other. Their silence confuses. Their decisions seem unpredictable, and the lack of control terrifies those who were used to managing them. Because nothing scares a manipulator more than an unpredictable empath. It's like suddenly turning off the light in a room full of shadows. No one knows where the danger is or what shape it takes. What's interesting is how this change affects the social environment. Suddenly, those who seemed like friends begin to show discomfort. The family that benefited from constant sacrifice starts demanding explanations. The circle that once applauded patience now whispers accusations. And the empath observes, perhaps for the first time, that the loyalty they believed they received was not love, but interest. It's a devastating yet liberating discovery. Most connections were tied to the benefit of their forgiveness, not to their essence as a person. Now consider something even more disturbing. What happens when the empath discovers the taste of their own power? A power not about dominating, but about withdrawing. Withdrawing attention, energy, absolution. It's a force that confounds because it isn't loud. It's silent, almost invisible, yet its impact is absolute. The moment they stop holding others up, they face a question they had never asked themselves. What do I want to hold up? And that question is a knife cutting away everything that no longer makes sense in their life. The empath begins to see life as a stage where the actors are not as good as they seemed. The eternal drama of apologies and forgiveness loses its value, and for the first time they realize they can leave the theater whenever they want. They no longer need to take part in the performance. And here lies the true revolution. While everyone else fights to keep the play going, the empath chooses to step off the stage and walk away. And that decision, that abandonment of the game, turns everyone else into puppets without a script. But there's something even deeper. When the empath stops forgiving, they also confront their own fear of loneliness. Because, let's admit it, many times the constant forgiveness was a survival mechanism, keeping people close, even toxic ones, because the idea of being alone felt unbearable. Yet in the moment they break that cycle, they discover that loneliness is not an enemy. It's a mirror. And in that mirror, they begin to recognize someone they had forgotten: themselves. That rediscovery is what truly destabilizes everything. Because an empath who no longer needs to be useful in order to exist, an empath who no longer clings to others' validation, is unstoppable. Their power doesn't come from destroying, but from rebuilding themselves. And what scares others most is not that they stop forgiving, but that they stop needing. Because as long as they needed, they could be controlled. But a human being who doesn't depend on anyone or anything to reaffirm their worth is the most feared and the freest figure that can exist. Do you see it now? It's not just about ceasing to forgive, it's about rebirth. A dark, unsettling, painful process, but one that opens a door that had always been closed. The door to the rawest authenticity. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. And that authenticity, though uncomfortable, though frightening, though it may leave bodies along the way, is the only place where the empath can truly begin to live. And now we arrive at the darkest yet most luminous part of this journey, because the true ending is not the fall of others' masks, nor even the collapse of the empath's own mask. The true ending is the moment they understand they no longer need to prove anything. Not their goodness, not their strength, not their endurance. In that moment, what opens is a silence so deep it feels infinite. A void that no longer frightens because it's no longer filled with the need for approval. That silence is freedom? Picture the scene. Everyone waiting for their forgiveness, all anxious for them to return to the role of savior, and the empath, calm, simply decides not to give any more energy. No speeches, no justifications, just an unsettling peace that cuts through the air. That peace is the greatest vengeance, because it isn't built from hatred, but from certainty. And that certainty carries an unbearable weight for those who always fed off their apparent weakness. They realize, too late, that their biggest mistake was confusing compassion with submission. The conclusion is as clear as it is brutal. When the empath stops forgiving, they don't destroy the world, they reveal it. And in that revelation, manipulators are exposed, false friends drift away, invisible chains break, and the only thing left standing is truth. That truth may hurt, but it is the only foundation on which an authentic life can be built. And though it may be frightening, though it may mean losing familiar faces, what is gained in return is priceless. Intact dignity, the freedom to choose, the rebirth of one's own voice. Now I want you to do something with me. Write in the comments the phrase, "The masks no longer deceive me." It isn't just a symbolic gesture, it's a declaration. It's the way to prove to yourself that you've understood the message, that you're no longer going to hand your power over to those who don't know how to value it. And if this video has made you think, if it has stirred something inside you, subscribe. Because we're not here to tell you what you want to hear. We're here to expose what no one dares to point out. I leave you with an idea that won't let you sleep tonight. Maybe it wasn't them who wore the masks. Maybe it was you. And if yours have already fallen, get ready, because what you'll see in the mirror can never be forgotten. Until the next video.